In the vast waters of the Bering Sea, there exist stories that even the most seasoned sailors struggle to explain. This is one of them, a tale that begins with a simple act of compassion, but ultimately challenges everything we believe about the connection between humans and wild animals. What took place aboard the fishing vessel Northern Star would not only save a life, but would also become one of the most studied and inexplicable cases of animal behavior ever recorded. The spring morning began with an unusual stillness. The sea, typically churning with waves, had settled into an almost unnatural calm. Captain Michael Anderson, a third-generation fisherman with 3 decades of experience, would later describe it as the kind of silence that often precedes extraordinary events. As he and his crew of 4 hauled in their morning catch, first mate Sarah Collins noticed something that made her question her own eyes. There, on the mirror-like surface of the water, a massive brown bear was struggling for survival. But it wasn't just the sight of a bear so far from shore that captured their attention. The animal was displaying behavior none of them had ever witnessed before. Instead of swimming in a single direction, as bears typically do when caught in open water, this one appeared to be deliberately staying in place, as if waiting for something. Its eyes were locked onto their vessel with an intelligence that seemed almost supernatural. The crew would later testify to wildlife authorities that even before the rescue began, they sensed something different about this bear. It wasn't acting like a wild animal in distress. Every time they maneuvered their boat, the bear adjusted its position, ensuring it remained in their line of sight. It was almost as if it was trying to communicate with them. At one point, the bear even raised its paw above the water in a gesture eerily reminiscent of a human signal for help. Captain Anderson had heard stories of unusual encounters between humans and wild animals, but he had always dismissed them as exaggerations. Yet something about this bear's behavior made him question everything he thought he knew. The look in its eyes wasn't just desperation, it was something deeper, something that would soon set off a chain of events that would make headlines around the world and leave scientists questioning their fundamental understanding of animal cognition. As the crew of the Northern Star prepared for their rescue attempt, they observed even more unusual behavior from the bear. Unlike most wild animals in distress, which tend to become more aggressive when approached, this bear appeared to grow calmer as the boat drew near. Though its breathing remained labored, it settled into a steady rhythm that seemed almost deliberate. The crew would later describe it as if the bear was pacing itself, conserving its energy for what was to come. Jack Reynolds, the ship's engineer, quickly modified their largest fishing net while keeping a watchful eye on the bear. What he saw made him pause several times in his work. The bear was watching their preparations with what appeared to be focused attention, its eyes following their movements as they assembled their rescue equipment. This wasn't the random glancing of a panicked animal. It was the calculated observation of a creature that seemed to understand their intentions. The first rescue attempt failed when the net couldn't support the bear's weight, but instead of thrashing in panic, as any wild animal would, the bear remained unusually still, as if processing what had happened. On the second attempt, something even more extraordinary occurred. As they positioned the net, the bear actually rolled to its side, making it easier for them to slip the netting under its massive body. Sarah Collins, who had worked with marine mammals for years, would later say this behavior was unlike anything she had ever witnessed in a wild animal. The moment they finally lifted the bear from the water, the crew witnessed something that would be just the beginning of the inexplicable events to follow. As the massive creature was suspended in the air, water streaming from its fur, it remained completely calm. Its eyes moved from one crew member to another, making direct eye contact with each of them in a way that seemed to convey something beyond mere animal awareness. Captain Anderson would later write in his log that, in all his years at sea, he had never felt more certain that he was in the presence of something that would change his life forever. Little did they know that getting the bear safely aboard their vessel would be only the beginning. What would happen in the next few hours and in the days that followed would challenge the boundaries between human and animal interaction in ways that would leave even the most skeptical scientists struggling for explanations. The moment the bear landed on the deck of the Northern Star, everyone expected chaos. Instead, they witnessed something that would change their lives forever. The massive creature, still dripping with seawater, rose to its full height. Time seemed to freeze as the crew braced themselves for the worst. But what happened next left them questioning everything they thought they knew about the natural world. The bear gently lowered itself into a sitting position and did something impossible. It placed one massive paw over its heart and then extended it toward Captain Anderson in what could only be described as a gesture of gratitude. The crew stood in the stunned silence. Sarah Collins dropped her tranquilizer gun, her hands shaking. This wasn't just unusual behavior. This was something that defied everything they knew about wild animals. But that was just the beginning. When Tom Martinez slipped on the wet deck while backing away, something extraordinary happened. The bear, moving with surprising grace, quickly positioned itself between Tom and the railing, effectively stopping his fall. It held perfectly still, allowing Tom to regain his balance by grabbing its thick fur. The moment Tom was steady, the bear calmly stepped away, as if helping struggling sailors was the most natural thing in the world. Throughout the afternoon, the bear's behavior became increasingly remarkable. When the ship's engine began making unusual noises, the bear led Jack Reynolds, the engineer, to the source of the problem by consistently pawing at a specific spot on the deck. Beneath that exact location, they discovered a damaged fuel line that could have caused serious problems if left unnoticed. It was as if the bear could sense the vibrations that even the experienced crew had missed. The most extraordinary moment came during a sudden storm that hit them on their way to shore. As massive waves crashed over the deck, the bear did something that left even the most skeptical crew members in awe. It began working alongside the sailors, using its massive strength to help secure loose equipment. When a heavy crate broke free from its moorings, threatening to crash into the ship's control room, the bear caught it with its powerful arms and held it in place until the crew could properly secure it. During a brief break in the storm, David Chen, who had been documenting everything on his phone, captured something incredible. The bear approached a container of fresh water they had left out, but instead of drinking immediately, it waited. Using its snout, it carefully pushed the container toward each crew member first, as if making sure they all had a chance to drink before taking its share. This display of consideration went beyond mere intelligence. It showed a level of compassion that no one thought possible in a wild animal. As the sun began to set, casting an orange glow across the deck, the bear did something that brought tears to Sarah's eyes. It gathered small fish from their catch and began distributing them to the seabirds that had been following their boat. The bear would carefully toss fish into the air, making sure each bird had a chance to catch one. This wasn't random play, it was deliberate sharing of food with other creatures. The crew found themselves drawn closer to the bear, their initial fear replaced by a sense of wonder. Captain Anderson, a man known for his skepticism, found himself sitting near the bear, talking to it as if it were a member of his crew. To everyone's amazement, the bear seemed to react to the tone and rhythm of his voice, tilting its head in apparent understanding and even responding with soft grunts at appropriate moments in the conversation. But what awaited them as they approached the shore would make all these incredible events pale in comparison. The bear was about to show them something that would not only astonish them, but would reshape our understanding of what is possible in this world. As the Northern Star approached the shoreline, where they planned to release the bear, something happened that made the crew question whether they were living in a dream. The bear, who had been watching the approaching land intently, suddenly began creating marks on the deck using water from its drinking container. The crew gathered around in disbelief as they realized the bear was drawing. Not random scratches, but a clear map of the coastline they were approaching, marking spots with X's using its wet paw. When they compared the bear's markings to their navigation charts, chills ran down their spines. The X's corresponded perfectly with dangerous underwater rocks not visible from the surface. Somehow, this creature was warning them about hazards in their path. Captain Anderson, trusting what he was seeing despite its impossibility, adjusted their course accordingly. Later investigation would confirm that their original route would have led them straight into a dangerous reef. The bear's next action left them speechless. It found a piece of rope and began tying it into complex knots, identical to the sailing knots the crew used to secure their equipment. When Sarah tried to take a photo, the bear actually posed with its creation, holding up the knotted rope as if proud of its accomplishment. This wasn't mimicry, it was demonstration of understanding that went beyond anything they could explain. As evening approached, the crew witnessed something that would haunt their dreams forever. a family of whales surfaced near the boat, and the bear began making distinct sounds, different from any natural bear vocalizations. To everyone's astonishment, the whales responded, their calls matching the bear's rhythm. For several minutes, they witnessed what appeared to be communication between species that should never have been able to interact. The most incredible moment came when they finally reached a safe spot to return the bear to shore. Instead of immediately heading for land, the bear went to each crew member in turn. To their amazement, it began recreating gestures they had used during the rescue, like a perfect mirror of their own actions. When it reached Captain Anderson, it did something that would later make headlines around the world. It raised its paw to shake his hand, just as humans would do. But the true miracle happened after they lowered the ramp for the bear to leave. The creature walked halfway down, then returned to retrieve something from the deck. It was a small piece of wood that had broken off during the storm. With deliberate care, the bear used its claws to carve something into the wood. When it finished, it placed the piece in Captain Anderson's hands. There, roughly but clearly carved, was a simple drawing of their boat, with 5 marks representing the crew and a larger mark for the bear, all connected in a circle. This piece of wood would later become the most studied artifact in marine rescue history, not just for its extraordinary origin, but for what happened in the months that followed. The bear's final gift was more than just a carving. It was the beginning of a series of events that would continue to unfold in ways that would make even the most hardened skeptics question what they thought was possible. As the bear finally turned to leave, it did something that sealed this story's place in maritime legend. It stood upright at the edge of the ramp, turned to face the crew, and placed its paw over its heart once again, holding this pose for a full minute as the setting sun silhouetted its massive frame. Then, just before disappearing into the gathering dusk, it raised both paws in what could only be described as a wave goodbye. But this goodbye wasn't the end of the story. In fact, it was just the beginning of something even more extraordinary. The events that would unfold over the next few days would prove that some bonds transcend the natural order of things, and that miracles sometimes come wearing fur and walking on 4 legs. 3 days after releasing the bear, the crew of the Northern Star was back at their usual fishing spot when something extraordinary appeared on the horizon. A group of fishing boats had gathered in an unusual formation, their crews all pointing at something in the water. As the Northern Star drew closer, Captain Anderson's hands began trembling on the wheel. There, swimming confidently through the waves, was their bear. But it wasn't alone. Following behind the massive brown bear was a procession that defied explanation. A pod of orcas swam in perfect formation, creating a sort of honor guard through the water. Seabirds wheeled overhead in organized patterns, and most incredibly, 2 other bears that had apparently been rescued from similar situations by other boats in the area were swimming alongside. It was as if their bear had somehow communicated its experience to other creatures and was now leading them. As the remarkable procession approached the Northern Star, something even more incredible unfolded. The bear they had rescued began directing the other animals in what could only be described as a coordinated display. The orcas created fountains with their blowholes, the seabirds formed perfect circles in the sky, and the other bears helped gather fish that had jumped from the water in excitement. It was like watching a circus performance in the middle of the ocean, with their bear as the ringmaster. When the bear finally reached the Northern Star, it did something that left the crew in tears. It had brought gifts. Clutched carefully in its mouth was a collection of perfect seashells, each one pristine and beautiful. But more amazingly, these weren't random shells. Each one matched the colors of the clothing the crew members had worn during the rescue. The bear remembered not just their presence, but specific details about each person who had saved its life. Sarah Collins, who had been filming everything, captured what happened next. The bear began teaching the other bears the same gestures it had learned aboard the Northern Star. They watched in awe as the 3 bears performed a synchronized series of movements that mirrored the rescue operation. It was as if their bear was sharing its story, passing on not just the memory, but the emotional significance of what had happened. Throughout the day, the bear demonstrated an even deeper connection with the crew. When Jack Reynolds mentioned that they were having trouble finding fish, the bear and its companions led the Northern Star to an area teeming with salmon. The bears worked together, herding the fish toward the boat's nets in a display of cooperation that would later be studied by marine biologists worldwide. The orcas joined in, creating barriers with their bodies to guide the fish exactly where they needed to go. But perhaps the most touching moment came when Captain Anderson shared the carved piece of wood the bear had given them with the other boat captains who had gathered to witness this extraordinary event. Their bear swam to each boat in turn, and to everyone's amazement, created a unique carving for each vessel that had ever helped any animal in distress. It was as if the bear was recognizing and celebrating all acts of kindness between humans and wildlife. As the sun began to set on this remarkable day, the bear organized one final display. The entire assembly of animals gathered in a circle around the Northern Star. Then, one by one, each creature made its own gesture of gratitude. The orcas performed graceful bows, the seabirds created a heart shape in the sky, and the bears rose up on their hind legs in perfect unison, each placing a paw over its heart just as their bear had done days before. This extraordinary reunion would be just the first of many. Over the coming months, the bear would return regularly, each time bringing new animals and demonstrating new levels of intelligence and compassion that would reshape our understanding of the natural world. But more importantly, it would forge a bond between humans and wildlife that would inspire a movement of conservation and cooperation across the entire region. 1 year after the initial rescue, the Northern Star had become famous throughout the maritime world. The incredible story of the bear had transformed not just the lives of Captain Anderson and his crew, but had sparked a chain of events that would leave an indelible mark on the relationship between humans and wildlife in the region. What began as a simple rescue had evolved into something that no one could have predicted. The bear's regular visits had become celebrated events, drawing observers from around the world. Each appearance brought new wonders. Sometimes it would arrive with injured animals, leading them directly to fishing boats for help. Other times, it would warn vessels of approaching storms by pointing to gathering clouds and creating urgent gestures that sailors quickly learned to trust. The bear had become a guardian of these waters, bridging the gap between the human and animal worlds in ways that seemed impossible. Most remarkably, the bear's influence had spread far beyond its immediate area. Other bears along the coastline began exhibiting similar behaviors, though none quite as extraordinary as the original. Fishing boats reported increasing instances of bears helping them locate fish, warning them of dangers, and even assisting in rescue operations. It was as if the bear had started a movement, teaching others of its kind that humans could be trusted allies rather than threats. The impact on the fishing community was profound. The same fishermen who once saw bears as nuisances now became their fierce protectors. A network of boats formed what they had called the Bear Watch, dedicated to protecting these intelligent creatures and documenting their remarkable behaviors. Captain Anderson's crew found themselves at the center of this movement, serving as ambassadors between the human and animal worlds. Sarah Collins' original videos of their bear had gone viral, reaching hundreds of millions of views worldwide. But unlike typical viral sensations that fade quickly, these images sparked a lasting change in how people viewed wildlife. Schools began incorporating the story into their curriculum, teaching children about the unprecedented possibility of deeper connections with the natural world. The carved wooden piece the bear had created became a symbol of hope, replicated on conservation logos and environmental campaign materials worldwide. The Northern Star itself underwent a transformation. While it remained a working fishing vessel, it also became a platform for understanding these extraordinary interactions. The crew began keeping detailed records of every wildlife encounter, noting behaviors that suggested intelligence and emotional complexity far beyond what anyone had imagined possible. Their observations helped establish new protocols for human-wildlife interaction, based not on fear or dominance, but on mutual respect and understanding. Perhaps the most touching development came during storm seasons. The bear would appear before major weather events, leading boats to safe harbor. On 3 separate occasions, it helped coordinate rescue operations for capsized vessels, working alongside human rescue teams as if it had been trained for such tasks all its life. The bear seemed to have taken on the role of guardian angel for the entire fishing fleet, turning the tables on its own rescue story by becoming a rescuer itself. The scientific community struggled to explain these phenomena, but the sailors who witnessed it firsthand understood that some things transcend conventional explanation. The bear had not just demonstrated remarkable intelligence, it had shown them that the boundaries between species were far more fluid than anyone had imagined. Every visit reinforced the lesson that acts of kindness could ripple out in unexpected ways, creating connections that defied our understanding of the natural world. As the seasons changed and years passed, the legend of the Northern Star's bear grew. New stories emerged regularly of its incredible feats, helping lost whales navigate back to their migration routes, organizing cleanup efforts where marine debris had accumulated, and even assisting in wildlife population surveys by leading researchers to previously unknown animal colonies. Each action seemed more purposeful and intelligent than the last, suggesting a level of consciousness that challenged every preconception about animal behavior. 5 years after the rescue, on the exact anniversary of that fateful day, something happened that brought the story full circle. The Northern Star was at the same spot where they had first found the drowning bear. As the sun rose over the horizon, they spotted something unprecedented. Their bear appeared, leading a group of 12 other bears, each carrying a small piece of driftwood in its mouth. Together, they formed a circle around the boat, and in perfect unison, each bear placed its piece of wood in the water. When the crew retrieved them, they discovered that each piece had been carved with a small symbol of gratitude. But the most incredible moment was yet to come. The original bear approached the boat one last time, now showing signs of age but still maintaining that remarkable intelligence in its eyes. In its mouth was something that left the crew speechless. The original piece of wood they had given it years ago, now adorned with hundreds of tiny marks. When finally deciphered, they realized it had been keeping count of every life it had helped save since its own rescue. The count was in the thousands. Captain Anderson, his voice thick with emotion, often tells new sailors that on that morning, when they chose to save a drowning bear, they never imagined they were setting in motion events that would rewrite our understanding of what is possible. Their simple act of compassion hadn't just saved one life, it had unlocked something magical in our world, proving that when we reach across the boundaries that separate us from the natural world, truly incredible things can happen. Want to discover more incredible stories of extraordinary animal encounters and daring rescues? Don't miss out on our weekly collection of heartwarming tales that showcase the remarkable bonds between humans and wildlife. Simply click the subscribe button below and join thousands of readers who are already experiencing the wonder of nature's most incredible moments.